I got a juicy question in my Big Business Podcast Instagram from Erin. So shout out to you, Erin, if you're listening. I hope you do. And I'm going to read it out and I'm going to do my best to answer this because it is actually a really tricky one. And by the way, this is a bonus episode of Big Business. In case you didn't know, I come out with 2 episodes every week. One is my main, which are a little bit longer and a bit more in-depth. And then we've got the bonuses, which are just more fun. So here we go. This is Erin's DM. Hi, Brittney. Love the pod and would love to submit a question. As a founder, I've found it tricky navigating transparency around revenue with employees. When a team member, like store managers or senior staff, sees sales figures, they often assume that high revenue equals high profit and, by extension, a large personal income for me, which, as you know, is not the case. This has led to uncomfortable conversations where employees reference influencer spend or marketing budgets to justify asking for raises without understanding the full financial picture or cost of growth. While I'm proud to offer above average pay compared to big box retailers, I don't have the same resources. Still, once they see the numbers, it's hard for them to understand why they're not earning more. Have you ever dealt with this? Any advice on how to handle it with clarity and grace? This is actually a great question, Erin, and I think it's something that probably a lot of smaller but growing business founders will experience, where your team is small enough that they're connected with you and the business, but you're like big in terms of, maybe you've got great sales coming through the door. And so that's always really tricky to have a smaller-ish team or a team where you're working super closely with them, but then you're having killer sales days. And then perhaps your staff, from what I'm assuming, they're feeling like they need to know more about the finances of the company. And also they're now like saying, I need to be paid more because we're making so many sales and because influencers are getting paid so much. It is such a difficult area to navigate, and it's such a grey area as well. And I can't speak from direct experience because none of my staff have ever brought this to my attention directly. So I can't say, yeah, I've had this happen in XYZ, but I can only imagine. And I have had these thoughts to myself as well with all of our staff, especially, our head office staff who might like work on our website or with influencers and they're on our Shopify and they can see our sales figures. I have wondered to myself if, people on our team or people who have worked with us in the past, have they looked at us doing a massive sale and like has their mind immediately gone to, oh my God, Britt and AJ have got so much money. So I totally get where you're coming from and how stuck it might make you feel. I think it's important to just, number one, for yourself, remember that no one is owed anything in terms of finances in your business if that doesn't fall directly within their role. So unless they are the CFO or your accountant or your bookkeeper or anyone within that side of the business that actually needs to like know and fully understand the figures, your staff in your retail stores are not owed your bank statement or your profit and loss statement. And I know that sounds really harsh, but that's just the truth because you're obviously a smaller business and you must have like retail stores. If they were working at, let's say, Cotton On, for example, they wouldn't be able to go to the owner of Cotton On and say, hey, like I saw you working with this influencer and they're getting paid a lot. Or, hey, we had a Black Friday sale that was really successful in store. I think I need to have more money or know more about how much money you have. And I just think this is where it's so tricky for owners to navigate the difference between like being a massive corporation and having that kind of smaller team that do feel like they are owed information or explanation in areas of the business that are just not part of their role whatsoever. And I think there's a few ways that you can tackle having these types of conversations. But I think the first most important thing is that you as an owner, you don't need to share everything. And I think that sometimes people can confuse transparency with full access because they're like two completely different things. And I think what you can do is just find a middle ground. So for example, you could explain the types of costs the business carries without like disclosing your full profit and loss statement with whatever staff member that is coming to you about it. For example, you could say something along the lines of, and you can use like exact stats from your business, but you can say, in our biggest month last year when we did XYZ, after paying for stock and freight and wages, marketing, rent and tax, the business still wasn't profitable. You know, you might be able to find a month that you can use as a reference just to give them a bit of a different perspective. It's just so difficult. Like, I'm even struggling to answer this. When it comes to them, like talking about your influencer budget and stuff, you could say that we've tested and proven that it drives revenue, which in turn keeps the business growing and keeps the team employed. I know it would be really difficult for staff. Let's say it's staff that are managing influencers directly and they're seeing how much these influencers get paid and comparing it to their wage. It's only understandable and fair that they'd be seeing what influencers get paid and they'd be going, holy shit, these influencers get so much money. But again, you're not giving that influencer money to personally give them a gift. Like, you know, it's a business transaction and you're only going to hope that by putting out, let's say $5,000 in your marketing budget for influencers, you're going to get back at least double. Like, you're going to get back 10,000 or 15,000. And I think we can educate our teams, you know, in this type of way without needing to go into absolute specifics. Like, staff in general, it isn't their responsibility to understand just how much it costs to run a business. And you and I and all founders know that for sure. But I think we can use the business's growth to educate our teams on how we're building a bigger future for our brands. I know for us, like, AJ and I put all of the money that Fate makes back into it. And the reason why we do that is so that we can create a bigger and better brand. And in turn, that also creates a bigger and better workplace. You know, if we were to just be doing all these big sales days and months and quarters and whatever, and then we were pocketing it all, we wouldn't be able to do anything cool in the future, whether that's like company-wide bonuses, I don't know, like fun group activities, team dinners, budgets for team breakfasts in the office, whatever it may be. So I think we can kind of educate our teams that from the top down, all this money that you're seeing is kind of getting put back into the business to trickle through every area of the business. And over time, it's going to mean more perks for you because employees will have the mindset of, well, what's in it for me, which is 100% the right kind of mind frame for them to have. Like, what's in all this for me? But at the same time, where do you draw the line with what they need to know versus what they don't need to know? And again, I think that's just something that a lot of us, like small business owners in quotation marks, because obviously my business is a lot bigger now, but when you are in that smaller team dynamic, you are going to have people potentially asking you these types of questions or saying, hey, I noticed that we spent $10,000 on influencers this month. You know, can you pay me $10,000? I mean, that's a bit extreme. But you know what I mean. It's just something that comes with being a smaller business where we're working so closely with our teams. And it's tricky because, you know, you'd want to just say, well, if you worked at Cotton On, like you wouldn't know any of this stuff. But obviously you don't want to say that and come across in the complete wrong way. Anyone who wants to work for like a smaller business will understand that it is a lot different to working for like a major corporation. And maybe you will have more access to seeing things like sales figures and doing a huge sale and seeing all the money coming in. And I think I would hope to give people the benefit of the doubt that they know us as owners and know that it's not cheap to run a business. And I guess if any of my staff were to ever feel the way that your staff are feeling and coming to you, I hope that they would know that it's within my best interest to continue funding the business through the sales that it's making itself to build a better future for all of us involved at Fate. But, there's some owners out there that probably are lining their pockets with all the profits. But I can't speak to that. And if anyone out there, was to say like, oh, my boss, like whether it's me or you, that they just make all these sales and millions of dollars in sales and they just keep it all for themselves. And it's just so low cost to run. Like to that, I would say like, I fucking wish, like I wish the business was 100% profit and no costs. But as owners, like we know that is so far from the truth. Running a business is the most expensive thing you'll do. I think actually a lot of people can be misconstrued. Is that the word? Misconstrued. Is that even a word? I don't know what I'm even saying, but I think a lot of people can have a false idea when it comes to starting a business, and they might, because of social media, think, oh, this is going to be great. Like I'm going to make all the money for myself. But especially when you're very first starting out, and especially if you're, working full time and starting a business on the side, that's the poorest. That's the least amount of money that you're ever going to have ever, because you're just putting every single dollar back into the business. And it takes so long to get the business to the point of being profitable. And even then, when it gets to that point of being profitable, you don't just automatically get the money. And a lot of people like don't understand that. And that's fine, especially if no one else has owned a business. But, once a business gets to the stage of having profitability, you don't just pocket it all. I mean, you can, or you can, be like AJ and I, where we go, nah, we're going to take that money and put it back into the business. We're going to pay more influencers. I'm going to up my ad spend. I'm going to invest in more stock. I'm going to open another store. That's what I've done with all the profits that Fate has ever made. But to sum it up, I think as always, it's important to stay grounded in your confidence as an owner and a leader and not in defense. The hardest thing is like not sounding guilty or apologetic when you say no. And as owners, we can acknowledge requests respectfully while still holding your boundary. For example, I absolutely see your value and I hear you, but right now we're reinvesting heavily to keep the business stable and growing, which is how we've been able to create great roles like yours. And then you could say, I'm committed to reviewing this again in a certain amount of months. If someone is coming to you and saying, hey, I saw that we're making lots of sales, can I have a pay increase or a promotion or whatever it is? And I think lastly, it's just important to remember, like I said earlier, you don't owe anyone your bank statements, just your leadership. And I think that's really important to remember. And the fact that you are thinking so deeply about how to handle this fairly when your staff are coming to you, it tells me that you're already doing a brilliant job. And I think you should just keep going with it, because you know what? I think there's a lot of big business owners out there who would have their staff come to them and say, hey, I noticed on Shopify that our sales are really high, or our daily sales in stores are going great. And they would just probably say, and what's that got to do with you? So the fact that you're even thinking about this and actively messaging me to get advice about how you could best handle this, I think it says a lot about you as a founder. But hey, to anyone out there that does have a job with a smaller-ish business, or a business that's like doing really well, but it's like solo founder owned, you can take it from me. It is so expensive to run a business, even if you're making massive sales. If anything, the more sales you're making, the more the business is costing, because that's what I've learned with Fate anyway. The bigger and bigger that we've gotten, and the higher and higher our revenue is, the higher and higher the costs are, the higher and higher the tax bills are, the higher and higher the BAS bills are, the higher and higher the pays are every week. Like the bigger a business gets, really, the more expensive it becomes. But my accountant says if your tax bill's getting bigger, you must be doing something right. So thank you so much, Erin, for sending in your question. I'm just checking. Was it? Yeah, it was Erin. And if anyone else has a question for me and Xander, Producer X, feel free to send us a DM on the Big Business Podcast Instagram account. That is where we get all of your DMs. That account is managed by Xander, April, and myself. And we check it every day. And we have like a massive shared board where we dump everyone's DMs. And so I've literally got So many DMs right here. It's actually so many, like a million bonus episodes and I'll be getting back to everyone's questions in episodes because you're giving me content at the end of the day. But that's all for now, friends, and I'll be back next week with my main episode.